Tonight, the world is watching as Iranians protest against the theocratic regime. President Trump issuing a warning tweet in the official language of Iran. Do not kill your protesters.
I believe it would have been 4 embassies.
And the president's rationale for that strike on a top Iranian military leader under fire. This amid an impeachment trial heading for the Senate. And
today I'm suspending my campaign for president with the same spirit with which it began.
Another one bites the dust as Cory Booker drops out of the Democratic presidential campaign. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
A shift in focus for protesters in Iran. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm Eric Phillips. The world watches as thousands of Iranian protesters rally against their government and their leaders.
Yeah, some even ripping down pictures of slain General Qasem Soleimani. A major contrast from just a week ago when mourners flooded the streets.
The key, Iran lying about shooting down the Ukrainian jet, killing all 176 people on board, including a number of Iranians. And tonight, President Trump is offering his support. Demonstrators flood Tehran shouting anti-government slurs. This after Iran's Revolutionary Guard changed its story, now admitting to downing a Ukrainian passenger jet, mistaking it for a missile. Many of those on board, Iranian-Canadian students heading back to school. The about-face angering Iranians because of what some considered a cover-up, claims the regime tried to stave off.
We had absolutely no intent in concealing anything from the people.
President Trump tweeting messages to protesters in both English and Farsi. I've stood with you since the beginning of my presidency, and my administration will continue to stand with you. To the leaders of Iran, the president tweeted, do not kill your protesters. Thousands have already been killed or imprisoned by you, and the world is watching. Observers say the missile mistake could have been due to Iran being on the lookout for U.S. retaliation after the regime targeted military sites in Iraq, like this one, housing American troops. Now we hear Trump reportedly authorized Soleimani's targeting up to 7 months ago if Iranian aggression resulted in any American life lost, which came 2 weeks ago when a U.S. contractor was killed in Iraq. But what about the imminent threat that the Trump administration often referenced as the reason for Soleimani's killing? Here's what the president told Fox News about that.
I can reveal that I believe it would have been 4 embassies, but Baghdad certainly would have been the lead.
But when pressed about whether there was a threat to U.S. embassies, Secretary of Defense Mark Esper said something different.
I didn't see one with regard to 4 embassies.
Now, the president has responded to this possible inconsistency, saying, quote, the fake news media and their Democratic partners are working hard to determine whether or not the future attack by terrorist Soleimani was imminent or not. And was my team in agreement? The answer to both is a strong yes.
And here now for analysis, Michael O'Hanlon, Senior Fellow and Director of Research and Foreign Policy at the Brookings Institution. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Jenna. Nice to be with you.
So this new report, it says the president authorized the strike against Soleimani 7 months ago. Does that, Michael, undermine the administration's claim that there was an imminent threat to Americans in the region?
You know, I think this is one of those where you can sort of see both sides. I don't want to sound like I'm avoiding the question, but Soleimani had been killing Americans for 20 years, and he certainly had been instigating KH militia attacks against U.S. facilities in Iran for a fair amount, in Iraq, where American forces were present for a fair amount of time prior to that. It intensified this past fall. So certainly the argument for going after Soleimani was increasingly powerful as the fall unfolded. And then whatever might have been suspected or known about future attacks came on top of that track record, which was not a good track record. So, you know, I'm sympathetic to the idea that Soleimani was, in fact, an ongoing risk to the United States. I think the Trump administration should just not feel the need to exaggerate what it knew. We knew enough to worry about this guy and to have a fairly decent case for taking him off the battlefield. I think the real question now is, how do you go forward? How do you repair relations with the Iraqi government? How do you work out a longer-term vision for getting back to the negotiating table somehow, perhaps someday with Iran? Those are the bigger questions to me, not exactly what we knew. I think there is some exaggeration going on about the intelligence. Better just to come clean and state what we knew.
Michael, let's talk about the president's tweets sent out in Farsi, the official language of Iran. Is this a Ronald Reagan, Gorbachev, tear down this wall type of moment?
I don't think so, because I fear that the Iranian theocracy is so brutal that it will do what it takes, Tiananmen Square style if necessary, to stay in power. I also don't know that President Trump, or any American, I don't mean this as an anti-Trump comment, really has the kind of credibility inside of Iran that would really help that kind of a movement. The good news is that Americans are not really, and the United States, we're not really hated by the typical Iranian citizen. The bigger vendetta, of course, is with the government. But I'm not sure we really have the kind of moral high ground to motivate a big new surge of demonstrations. So I almost feel that we should just stay fairly quiet here. What the president said so far is fine, but I don't see him in a position to have any great effect on future events.
These protests that we're seeing in the streets of Iraq after the regime admits to bringing down that plane, how significant are these protests?
I'd put them in the moderate category. And of course, when you say that, you're always at risk of being proven wrong the next day when they intensify by a factor of 10. But, again, the Iranian regime is good at not only foreign adventurism, but domestic suppression. The Quds Force has, and the Iraqi Revolutionary Guard forces, or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard forces have domestic and foreign arms. The domestic arm is about containing dissent at home. And I think it would be quite surprising to see this get out of hand. When there are thousands of demonstrators, that's big. When it's hundreds of thousands and they start using violence or impeding the movement of vehicles or otherwise stopping the functioning of the country, that's when you look for the regime to feel the need to do something. And I'm not really sure we're likely to get to that stage.
All right, Michael Hanlon with the Brookings Institute, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Thanks,
gentlemen.
Michael. Meanwhile, an FBI investigation shows December's airbase shooting in Pensacola, Florida, was an act of terrorism. Attorney General Bill Barr making that announcement today and detailing some of the Bureau's findings.
The evidence shows that the shooter was motivated by jihadist ideology. During the course of the investigation, we learned that the shooter posted a message on September 11th of this year stating the countdown has begun. He also posted other anti-American, anti-Israeli, and jihadi messages on social media, including 2 hours before his attack.
The shooter was a member of the Royal Saudi Air Force. He was at the Pensacola Air Base for training. Now, during their investigation, FBI, they found the other Saudi military members in the U.S. have also posted jihadist messages. The DOJ is expelling 21 Saudi nationals from the U.S. To Capitol Hill, where impeachment delay is almost over. Speaker Nancy Pelosi preparing to finally send the 2 articles to the Senate.
Yep, and for the latest on this, we turn now to Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson. And Abby, any specifics on when this might happen?
Well, Eric, it's still not clear what day she's going to hold that vote, but we know that Speaker Pelosi is meeting with her caucus tomorrow morning. She's going to discuss moving it forward, and she's preparing the House for a vote early this week. And what we do know for sure is that when she sends those articles, the Senate trial will begin almost immediately.
There will be no haggling with the House over Senate procedure.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell stood strong throughout the standoff with Pelosi, refusing to cave to her demands to promise witnesses in a Senate trial.
The senators who are thinking now about voting for witnesses or not, they will have to be accountable for not having a fair trial.
While McConnell and other top Senate Republicans hope to end the trial quickly, they will take a vote on witnesses after the trial begins.
Obviously, that is the most contentious part of one of these proceedings, and that'll be addressed at that time and not before the trial begins.
According to a new Politico Morning Consult poll, 57% of all voters would prefer witnesses called forward.
Who ever heard of a trial without witnesses and documents? It's unprecedented.
All eyes will be on those GOP senators seen as vulnerable for re-election this year, like Susan Collins, Martha McSally, Cory Gardner, and Tom Tillis. Schumer believes they might have a hard time voting with McConnell.
Many of his colleagues are very, very worried about going home and saying they're not for witnesses and documents.
Now, Speaker Pelosi says if the Senate doesn't have witnesses, the House could still call forth Ambassador John Bolton, who says he will testify in the Senate if subpoenaed. Back to you, Eric and Jenna.
All right, Abigail Robertson on Capitol Hill, thank you. Tonight, another Democrat is dropping out of the race for the White House. Senator Cory Booker announcing today an end to his campaign.
Today, I'm suspending my campaign for president with the same spirit with which it began. So now I recommit myself to the work. I can't wait to get back on the campaign trail and campaign as hard as I can for whoever is the eventual nominee.
The senator from New Jersey has criticized the Democratic field's lack of diversity. His exit from the race will mark another high-profile African-American bowing out of the race. Booker's message of healing and unity struggled to catch on, and the candidate failed to qualify for tomorrow night's debate in Iowa.
Well, stick around. Our Faith Nation political panel is up next. We'll be right back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
The dwindling pack of 2020 presidential candidates is down to a dozen. Of those 12, only half will be on tomorrow night's debate stage in Iowa. And what was once a historically large and diverse set of Democrats now features all white candidates, 2 women and 4 men. Former Vice President Joe Biden will take the stage with former Mayor Pete Buttigieg, Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, billionaire activist Tom Steyer, and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. Tomorrow night's debate marks the final showdown ahead of the Iowa caucuses.
And here with us now for our Faith Nation political panel, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Clarence Page with the Chicago Tribune, and CBN's chief political analyst David Brody. Thank you to both of you for being with us here today.
Thank you for having us.
Well, Clarence, you first. What do you make of the remaining pack of Democrats? I mean, this was supposed to be a very diverse group.
Yes, and I love hearing Janet say, by the way, that we're down to 12. I mean, there's a great deal of relief out there. It shows you the kind of times we're in. But anybody who worried about there being a future for white people in politics can be relieved now. But frankly, yeah, but you know, this was an issue. Cory Booker really made an issue out of it here just before the last debate. And I think really, though, certainly here in the post-Obama era, we can have a little less emphasis on the race or gender of a candidate and more on their programs, what they're really arguing for. And that was a problem for Cory Booker, I think, that he couldn't distinguish himself enough from the others to really stand out.
Yeah. The Des Moines Register poll has Sanders in the lead, and then this this afternoon, a brand new Monmouth poll has Biden leading. David, is there a clear frontrunner in this race?
There really isn't. It's wide open. It's the wild, wild west out in Iowa, which I guess is the Midwest. So it's anyhow. But the point is that we're going to see what plays out in Iowa. It could be Bernie, could be Biden, could be Elizabeth Warren. Buttigieg could even pull off the upset. The point is there are 3, probably 4 slots, obviously, coming out of Iowa. And also what's going to be interesting to see is what's the percentage. Long story, don't want to get into the arcane details, but you're going to need more than 15% of the vote to get some delegates. So, you know, the question is, are you coming in with 16%, coming in with 14% and getting locked out of delegates? So I think a lot is going to be math. I think we're in for a long haul here.
Yeah, tomorrow night's debate, can that change the end result in Iowa?
I don't think so, unless there's a big flub on someone's part, but I think they've all been pretty, well, I don't want to call them flubless because Biden might be in his category all his own, but the rest of them I don't think will flub it.
The lasagna's in the oven.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
In the Wild Wild West. Well, now, you recently wrote a column criticizing Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's comments that the Democrats' big tent is too big. Right. AOC said that in any other country, she would not even be in the same party as a moderate Democrat like Joe Biden.
And she's probably right.
She may be right. Should there be a purity test for Democrats?
I don't think so. I don't think it's good for the party. And Barack Obama certainly doesn't think so, really. I quoted him there. You may recall him talking about, you know, we shouldn't have any purity tests. And indeed, that for moderates, and I think the majority of Democrats across the country, outside of the Twitter Democrats, outside of the talk show Democrats, but just the ordinary Democrats, they really want somebody who's just going to be a good candidate and represent the party well. And Joe Biden, as unflashy as he is, right now, as he says, voters want a return to normalcy as far as the Democratic voters are concerned. And that's why he's still leading in the polls. For all people talk about his flubs or whatever else, he has a remarkable consistency there.
Yeah. Clarence, on impeachment, Speaker Pelosi, she's going to send over the articles sometime this week. How big of a role do you think impeachment will play on the debate stage tomorrow night?
I don't really see much of a role, frankly, and that's just because I'm a journalist. I'm looking for a headline, a lead, something that sounds new. And one thing Donald Trump has done is to normalize things like impeachment and other things that we used to be startled at the mere mention of it. And now it's like, oh, gosh, another impeachment hearing or another bunch of memos going through whatever. But there will be, frankly, this really is a moment for the candidates to bash Donald Trump. They don't do that enough, I think, if you're really going to be serious about running against Donald Trump. There are a lot of issues involved in this election, but one thing that unifies Democrats is Donald Trump and being opposed to him, just like Hillary Clinton unified Republicans 4 years ago.
Well, the president's reasoning for authorizing the killing of Iranian General Soleimani is now under fire. Will that take center stage during tomorrow night's debate?
No, I don't think it'll take center stage. You would think it would. It's a CNN debate. Hey, look, I'm just going to be honest. It's a CNN debate, and you're asking about a foreign policy question, which they will, of course, ask. But, of course, the big criticism with these Democrat candidates in 2020, none of them really come out in this full vocal support for the Iranian protesters. That has got to be a question. Should it be center stage? I think it should. Will it? I don't think so.
All right.
Your thoughts? Indeed. Well, no, Deb makes a very good point. This is a campaign in which the whole question of foreign policy is kind of a blur to a lot of people, and that's unfortunate, but there are not that many Americans involved over there. I say this as a Vietnam-era veteran. When you had a draft going on, everybody cared about foreign affairs. Nowadays, people don't care that much about it and are kind of surprised. My son was surprised to hear we still have troops in Iraq, for example. I think a lot of Americans are.
All right, Clarence and David, thank you both very much.
Coming up, after months of stalled talks, how the U.S. is doing to try to get North Korea back to the negotiation table. That's coming up next.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Tonight, the U.S. is trying to revive now stalled nuclear talks with North Korea. White House National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien telling Axios the White House has reached out to the North Koreans to resume negotiations. The talks following President Trump's historic steps into North Korea to meet with Kim Jong-un came to a halt in October. The latest outreach comes after Trump's birthday wishes for Kim were met with a tepid response. In December, Kim's warnings to the U.S. of a, quote, Christmas gift stirred fears of a long-range missile test.
Here with us now is Bradley Bowman. He is the Senior Director of the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. And he has served as a National Security Advisor in the U.S. Senate to members of both the Senate Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committees. And Bradley, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. So just to start off, what went wrong? Why are the nuclear negotiations at a standstill right now?
I think you have to bring this back in the end to Kim Jong-un and his regime. This is part of a long-term strategy that he has pursued to attain nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them. And the Trump administration deserves credit for implementing a long-term strategy to try to bring them to the negotiating table. We've had the presidential level summits. But in the end, we have not exerted sufficient pressure on him to determine the cost-benefit analysis incentivizes him to take tangible steps to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula.
This new outreach reported by Axios, how significant is this, Bradley? And do you see the two countries actually coming back to the negotiation table?
I think it's important for the U.S. to continue to signal that we're ready for negotiations, but I think the manner of those negotiations matter. I would not recommend any more presidential summits at this point. I believe that one of the main reasons the summits have not succeeded up to this point is because they're insufficient level at the working level. In other words, there were not common definitions about what denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula looked like, metrics, milestones, these sorts of things. And so if you jump straight to a presidential summit without having done the working level negotiations and details and definitions along the way, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, I'm afraid.
John Bolton, the president's former national security advisor, said the Trump administration's approach toward North Korea and their policy is failing. What do you think?
You know, it either hasn't succeeded yet or it's failing. Our think tank recently put out a comprehensive study in December calling for Max Pressure 2.0. And that is a multifaceted campaign with diplomatic, military, economic, and information warfare components to try to bring North Korea back to the negotiating table. I think the bottom line is that we need to help inform the North Korean people that they deserve better. And until Kim Jong-un begins to fear his own people, I think think he's unlikely to make the concessions he needs to make with respect to his nuclear program and his intercontinental ballistic missile program.
We're well past Christmas at this point, and no sign yet of that Christmas gift that Kim has promised. Is that a good sign?
I think it's a good sign that they haven't conducted a nuclear test or another nuclear test or an ICBM test. But if you look at the rhetoric in the last few days, it's looking like that may come soon. And so I don't think the status quo is in our favor. I think at some point we're going to need to go to this max pressure 2.0 campaign that our think tank has suggested is necessary, not for the purpose of starting a war, but for the purpose of ending it. Really, this robust max pressure 2.0 campaign is the best hope we have of denuclearizing the North Korean peninsula without war, in my view.
All right, Bradley Bowman with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
We're back in just a moment. You're watching Faith Nation.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Tonight, college football's two best teams will go toe-to-toe. It's Clemson versus LSU in the College National Championship.
And for Clemson's star quarterback, it's about much more than just a football game. Trevor Lawrence has been outspoken about his Christian beliefs and quoted scripture after his team's semifinal win over Ohio State.
I have Ephesians 3:20, and it says, God can do immeasurably more than any of us can because of him within us. And that's just so true.
He was holding church on the field there. Clemson is looking to defend their national title and win their third championship in 4 years. They face a formidable LSU Tigers squad coming in as the 5-point underdog in what looks to be an action-packed game. Something else to look forward to tonight, President Trump and First Lady Melania will be at the game, kicking off at 8 o'clock Eastern Time in New Orleans.
I think we can safely say, go Tigers.
There you go. Have a great time. We'll be here tomorrow night.